I'd like to welcome you to this wonderful webinar for the class of 2021. I'm Carrie Ramp. I'm Vice President and Chief Information Officer at F&M, and I'm going to be serving as the moderator for today's discussion. Just a couple of quick housekeeping details to get things started. All attendees are muted with their cameras off. We encourage you to use the Q&A box throughout the webinar to submit your questions. I'll be keeping an eye on that as questions as they come in, and whenever possible, I'll be attempting to combine questions so that we can cover more topics throughout the Q&A period. I know we won't be able to get to everyone's questions during the session. A lot of details are coming out on our reopening plan website, and we encourage you to continue visiting that. You can find a link to it directly from the top in the bar of the main site at www.fnm.edu. There's updates happening to the FAQs as well. If you can't find answers to your questions in the materials that you find there, there's also a form there where you can submit your question to seek further information. So for today's session, we're going to hear from President Barbara Altman, Provost and Dean of the Faculty Cameron Wesson, Vice President and Dean of Student Affairs Margaret Hazlett. We'll all be saying a few words and answering your questions. I'm also really pleased that Donna Flum, who's co-chair of our reopening operations team, is also joining us to help answer questions. President Altman, would you like to go ahead and get things started?
Thank you. Yes, I just had to make sure that I could unmute and find my video button. Thanks very much, Carrie. Hello, class of 21. I can't see you, but I know you're out there, and there's quite a large number of you, so I'm delighted to have you on this call. The campus is very quiet. I walk through occasionally to make sure that everything's still here, and it will be a relief to have you and the other classes back in the fall, assuming you decide to come and join us for in-person education and for residential life. So I want to begin by saying that this is a heck of a way to go into your senior year. It is a point of transition for you. This next year is really important for you to finish off your academic studies at the undergraduate level in good shape and in strong form. And so I'm sure you've got dozens and dozens and dozens of questions. We'll answer as many of them as we can here today, but I will echo what Carrie Ramp said, namely that there are lots of decisions where we are still actively making them and investigating the best way to do things. So that new website where the link is from the banner on the opening page of the website, that will continue to have the most updated information every time something else falls into place. It's a bit like a game of dominoes. The decision that we released last week, Wednesday, on July the 1st, which was the date that I said that we would announce, that then unleashed all of these other decisions that we now are in the process of making so that we've got everything in place before you get here so you know what to expect. It's hard to cope with this degree of uncertainty in our professional lives, uncertainty in our personal lives as well, not quite knowing where you need to be when, but that will come to you very quickly, that information. We should have more housing information soon, and Dean Hazlett will be speaking to that. Also, Provost Wesson is going to speak next, and he will tell you what to expect for the delivery of the academic program beyond what you've already read in our communications. And please be sure that we're going to keep the communications coming your way with email, with other webinars if necessary. I hope to send a video soon. I also want you to know that we are looking really strong on the first year class. We have a great first year class coming in, and the size is about the same as last year's first year class from what we can tell so far. Also really good retention for the rising sophomores, rising juniors, and rising seniors. So it seems as though a lot of people are game for doing this grand experiment that we're all going to be involved in this year of learning how to run in-person education and residential life in the era of COVID-19 and how we do it safely. We've put a great deal of time and energy into making the first round of decisions and now moving forward from there to draft everything else. There are 4 principles on which we are making these decisions, and they are going to be applicable in every different facet of the operations of the year. So the first of those has to be health and safety. That's the health and safety of all of the students, but also all of the professional staff, all of the faculty, and the community around us. So we're not an island apart from the city of Lancaster. We are actually an integral piece of it. So we have to accept a lot of individual and collective responsibility for following safety protocols and health measures, because our ability to have you on campus depends on minimizing contact and minimizing risk. So if you're planning to come back, and I very much hope you are, it's going to have to be on the expectation that life is going to look rather different. It's going to be rich and interesting and very full, but it will be very different, not only at FNM, but at every single college and university across the country. So we have that individual and collective responsibility. We are going to have a social compact that everybody who's going to be on campus will be asked to agree to. And it's going to require constant vigilance. We can't get complacent about this. But that said, what we're talking about is physical distancing, as well as masks and hand washing and cleaning protocols. It's not always social distancing. We can create community while respecting all of those other necessary measures to keep people safe. So health and safety of all of the members of the community, both campus community and beyond us, is number one on that list of pillars. The second pillar is the quality of the academic experience. And you've already seen how much thought has gone into the module and hybrid instruction plan that the provost office laid out a couple of weeks ago. That was formulated, just let me repeat, it was formulated in close conversation with a lot of students on the committee, with a lot of faculty, and it took into account the more than 700 responses we had to a student survey about what did and didn't work well when we moved courses online for the second half of spring semester. So we've taken into account what we learned then. And the module system is designed both to give us maximum flexibility in case the circumstances around us change beyond our control, but also that allows that high impact, high mentoring component and collaborative element that is a part of F&M courses that really defines what we do. So the module sessions with 2 courses at a time and with hybrid instruction allows us to provide an education to the students who can't come back to campus or who choose not to come back to campus, but also all have that virtual high touch component that actually is the defining characteristic of what we do. So academic experience was the second of the principles on which we were making decisions and will continue to make decisions. The third of them is the quality of student life. This will be an in-residence community experience. Again, even though it looks different from what you will have experienced in the first 2.5 years or 2.5 years of your experience on campus. So it will be rich and full. We had most of our services and a lot of social activities available online for that second half of the spring term. I know Dean Hazlett will talk about this a little bit more, and we will be able to do most of what we do, although with alterations to do them as safely as possible. So the quality of student life and the richness of your ability to engage here is the third of the principles on which we are making decisions. And the fourth of them is equity and inclusion. We are looking at every decision we make to make sure that it serves all of our populations. And if it doesn't, we adjust until it does. So those are the 4 pillars that we are working from and on. And I want to make sure to stress again, and we can't say this often enough, that we're not going to have answers to everything you wanted to hear today or all of the questions that you ask, but they will continue to be coming. So right now, because you're going to be curious to know how you actually finish up in your senior year, I'm going to ask Provost Cam Wesson to take over and talk about the delivery of the academic program. Provost Wesson, may I pass off to you?
Yes, you may, President Altman. Thank you very much for those of you that are online who are interested in learning more information about both the academic and social programs that we're going to be offering for you in the fall as we plan for your return to campus. I just want to stress everything that President Altman said about placing your health and safety and well-being at the forefront of the decisions that we've been faced and are continuing to face as we plan for your return. It's absolutely our central concern. And I know that there will be questions and we'll be happy to address those. Primarily, since I'm in charge of the academic mission as Provost and Dean of the Faculty, I want to speak about what you can expect from your faculty, from your class experience, and from academic affairs when you return to campus. So as you know, much publicized, we've moved to the hybrid model, which allows us to take advantage of individual modules rather than working in our traditional semester structure. If you haven't spent a lot of time investigating how that is going to work, essentially what we've done is taken our traditional 15-week semester and broken that into two separate pieces called modules. So in each what would have been semester, you will now have two modules, and we'll be taking two individual courses in each one of those modules. This gives us 4 modules with an additional January term. It's something that I have been told by colleagues who have been at FNM for a long time that FNM used to do with great fanfare, that the J term allows students to pursue independent studies and vigorous passions for a subject or for a subject matter that we don't often offer courses in under the close tutelage of a faculty member. And this is really an opportunity to dig deep and dive deeply into a subject that you have an interest in but may not have been able to take courses at FNM. And so the hybrid model will allow you to focus more completely on the course material that you're being offered within these 7-week periods. So by taking 2 courses at a time, we've responded to the spring semester student survey that told us that many of you felt completely overwhelmed by having to take 4 courses simultaneously in the online environment. So the hope is that by dividing that up into smaller units, you have the time that you need to master that material. Faculty have the time to deliver it in the ways in which you want to receive it and can engage with it most easily, and that you will be set up for greater levels of success. And truthfully, it gives us a much better opportunity to pivot should COVID-19 and other issues arise that force us to change the method in which we deliver our academic program in the fall. So we made this decision after deep deliberation, as President Altman suggested. Our Educational Policy Committee looked at no less than 18 different variations of how we could best offer an academic program that would meet your needs and our requirements to keep you healthy and safe. And so we really do believe that this is our best way of offering our academic program. Unless you think that we have gone this alone, we have consulted with experts whose institutions offer this as their standard form of student engagement to ensure that we have taken all of their concerns and all of their experience into consideration as we fleshed out the module program. We have adjusted our academic calendar as well, some of you may have noticed, with the idea that we are going to have you leave campus at Thanksgiving break and then not return for final exams afterwards. This allows us to hopefully avoid the highest incidence of regular flu season, as well as avoid the possibility of inadvertently introducing COVID-19 to our community by having students travel home and then come back to campus immediately thereafter for the Thanksgiving break. So again, this is an opportunity to reduce risk exposure and also hopefully allow you to have a sufficient time to prepare for your final exams. I want to answer a few of the questions that were pre-circulated that deal with academic affairs that hopefully can save you from having to ask them a second time here in this forum. But as President Altman said, we really do welcome your questions, and if you would like to have a deeper dive on any of these, please make sure to bring it to our attention. So one of the questions is, will COVID-19 interfere with my ability to graduate in May? What I have to tell you is that our return to work and operations group, our educational policy committee, and everyone in academic affairs is pledged to make sure that your student experience keeps you on track to graduate. We implemented the module system in order to give us the flexibility that we needed in case we encountered a change in the COVID situation, so that you wouldn't have to experience a disruption that would keep you from being able to make your graduation requirements. So we have every hope and every intention of being able to keep you on target for a May graduation. There are also questions circulating about what the classroom experience and the laboratory experience are going to be like, and will students have to wear masks? So we will be implementing all of the CDC and Pennsylvania Department of Health requirements for health and safety. Those requirements mandate at least 36 square feet of personal space for each student in a classroom or lab setting. And they also require that we wear masks in public spaces. If those mandates change, we will pivot accordingly. But all that we want to do is to ensure that we can protect your health and safety and be in conformity with those larger expectations. And specifically, I wanted to mention when it comes to laboratory courses, one of the things that happened in the spring is that we found very creative and novel ways to offer lab courses in the online environment. Although we intend to offer our laboratory courses on campus, should we have to pivot, those teaching those courses are well aware and familiar with everything that they need to do to be able to offer comparable experiences in the online environment. We've reduced the headcount in individual lab meetings so that students will be able to master that material, but maintaining all of the personal space that you need to stay safe. And I see this as a net positive, because what it means is that there will be a lower head count in each of those laboratory courses, which will mean that you will get much more direct and personal interaction with your laboratory instructor. A full 70% of our courses will be offered on campus, which is an incredible commitment on the part of our faculty to meeting your educational needs. And I think it truly shows how much they care about you and the deep interactions that we have between faculty and students as mentors and as learning partners. They are anxious to welcome you back to campus in August. And at the same time, those faculty who have chosen to offer their courses remotely have challenged themselves and have pledged to meet all of your expectations for a high quality, high touch experience, even if it's online. They will be providing those courses with synchronous activities that will both challenge and inspire you the way that all of your course experiences at F&M have to this day. We are incredibly enthusiastic about the possibility of having you back on campus and being able to complete your academic programs. You are resilient. We as faculty, staff, and others on campus have tried to match your resiliency. We've overcome incredible obstacles to date just to get to this point. And if our summer 1 and summer 2 experiences so far are any indication, both faculty and students have risen to the occasion in these trying circumstances, and even in the online only environment have really gone above and beyond what we had in the spring to meet your educational expectations. F&M will continue to be F&M, and we will continue to hold ourselves to a super high standard when it comes to student engagement and student education. And I think that you should expect no less from us as diplomats. So now I'm going to offer Vice President Margaret Hazlett an opportunity to talk about student affairs and student life.
Thanks, Cam. So hello, seniors. Nice to connect with you today, and hope everybody, you and your families, are healthy and safe. We miss you. We're excited to have you back come this fall. Student Affairs is busy throughout the summer preparing for your return this fall. Over 900 students completed our student life survey that was sent out a few weeks ago. So those who completed that, thank you, because that feedback was very helpful to us as we talk about your experience with the co-curricular offerings, everything from the college health programming to some of our virtual wellness offerings to the Student Wellness Center, telemedicine, as well as Ospagad. So your feedback on that is helping us think about our programming and how we reach you both virtually and in person come the fall. And that, I think, is the exciting part of that, is you are a creative class, and that creativity will be needed when you return to campus this fall as we really rethink about this experience. As President Altman said, and Provost Wesson also highlighted, it is going to be different. It's going to be different. But I'm really excited about that and really looking forward to engaging with students and how we think about the student experience in the times that we are in right now. A couple of things I do want to highlight also on this call, and I'll turn it over shortly. Beth Throne, Ospagad, as rising seniors, I'm sure you're curious about some of the offerings that they've been putting out to students throughout the summer and how things look as you think about beginning your senior year this fall, and to have some programs in mind as you're planning that fall semester. Also with me is Donna Flum, who's from the Office of Advancement, who I've borrowed for the next couple of months. She's co-chair of the Reopening Operating Team, ROOT, that you've heard about in some of our email messaging about the reopening of the college this fall. And she's been all things in student affairs, looking about how we are preparing for that reopening in preparation for your arrival. So she will assist in answering some of the questions you might have related to student life. But at this time, I do want to turn it over to Beth Throne to say a few words about the senior year experience and what you can expect from Ospagat. Beth.
Thank you, Margaret. I'll be brief and quick. I know folks, you're talking about considering your education. Just so you know, Ospagat, we've been open all summer. We will continue to be open all summer. If folks want to jumpstart some thinking for the new year, we are accommodating time zones. We are accommodating how you want to meet. When you return to campus, if you say, Beth, I prefer to have a one-on-one virtually, just know we are going to be modifying our appointments, our drop-in hours, so we can help you the best way. And that includes recording our sessions, converting our employer visits to more virtual recruitment sessions and online recruitment sessions, which makes it more accessible. And our senior boot camp, which a couple hundred seniors go through each year. I am working on ways to make it the most accessible for you without doing a large group workshop. And it may be we split it up over 2 different sessions that we also record and do one-off pieces. So I'm working on that. I have 2 dates. You don't need to know them now, but we're getting everything set. And then we're also working with Advancement to extend the reach of the True Blue Network. We have had so many 2020s get opportunities, mentorship, guidance through that network. So by the time that you are using it in full steam for a job search, or if you decide to go to graduate school and do a pivot, as many 20s actually have started to do, know that we will have a network and resources that will be robust in place. So bottom line, we'll continue to be here, continue to adapt, and we are really strengthening the resources that are going to support your launch, whether it's graduate school, fellowship, employment, and beyond. So just count us in.
Thanks, Beth. We're going to pivot now to the question and answer period. If you have a question that you haven't yet posted in the Q&A, please feel free to do so now, and I'll be doing my best to cover a range of questions. There's a sort of a 2-part question for Provost Wesson, I believe, and it comes in a couple of flavors. The question is, if I was planning to graduate in December, but I needed to take 5 credits, is that allowable, and will that work with the module system? I'm not able to stay through the J term to take a 5th course then. Similarly, I need to take 5 courses in the fall and the spring in order to graduate on time in May. That's sort of the first part of the question, so maybe I'll start with that. There's another one that sort of relates to, I'll just preface it so you have it at least partway in mind, that how are we assuring that seniors can meet all of their major and minor requirements with this change?
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. So I did see those questions and I want to allay those fears. Our Educational Policy Committee, in committing to the modular system, did consider this, and they have guidance, which includes those students that require extra registration during the modules will have a petition process through which you simply tell us the courses that you need and the modules in which you need to take them to be able to complete your degree requirements. And then those are reviewed by the Educational Policy Committee for exceptions. So we are not attempting to artificially limit your ability to take an overload to be able to meet your graduation expectations. We just want to be able to make sure that we have paced it appropriately and have approved it. I also saw a question related to this, Carrie, that was about I can't afford to pay for J-term. J-term will not come at extra expense. This was very important for us as we plan the academic year, that with everything that our students have been through, we did not want J-term to be a financial impediment to students being able to complete their degree requirements. So if you do choose to take a J-term course and you've been registered full-time in the fall or the spring, that will also be included and will not cost you anything extra. And
major and minor requirements in terms of the course schedule?
Major and minor requirements, we have worked with individual department chairs to ensure that they have spread those out across the modules. The worst thing in my mind when we went to the module system was for students to discover that the courses that they needed to be able to complete their degree would be stacked in 1 or 2 modules, and they wouldn't be able to take them across the 4 modules in the J term. We believe that we've addressed that with each individual department, but I also want to say this. We recognize that with a move this large, that there will be individual cases in which students have difficulty registering for the courses that they need. The registrar, the associate deans, the Educational Policy Committee, and your advisors have all been notified that these sorts of cases may arise upon occasion, and we are empowered to work to resolve your individual situations to ensure that there isn't any impediment to you getting the courses that you need in the time that you need them to be able to complete your graduation requirements.
Thank you. There's a variety of versions of this question, but one was posed by a student, Jihan Ma. The question concerns international students and is wondering if someone could comment on recent policies on international students and how the college will make sure international students fare at FNM either in or outside of the US. Particularly in one of the other questions, it notes with the changes around or announcements related to online learning and various restrictions.
I'll take a first attempt at that, and I believe others may want to follow up as well. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this situation, we are talking about a very immediate, less than 24-hour ago release of this new government standard in terms of student visas. And it simply affects students who would be taking all of their courses online during an academic period. The government is no longer allowing that. We have worked literally overnight and into this early morning to respond as an institution. And first, I want to say that we are pledged to meeting the educational needs of our international students. We have faculty who have already stepped forward and said that if the impediment is not taking an in-person course, we will offer independent studies. We will find ways to meet the need, but we are still attempting to find out exactly what the implications of this are. We are not the only institution that's gone to a module system, and we want to make sure whether this applies to a semester or whether it would apply to an individual module. I anticipate that this would only be a dire circumstance for our institution should we be forced by COVID-19 considerations to cancel all on-campus courses and migrate fully into the online space. But we are working diligently, and again, within the last 24 hours, Sue Minicky, our Dean for International Programs, has been briefing senior staff, the president, and myself on institutional responses, and we are awaiting some answers from the professional organization that works with immigration and the Department of Education to ensure that we understand all of the implications. But we definitely do not want to put our students in a situation where your visa status and your immigration status would be placed in peril because we're not offering enough face-to-face courses on campus to meet this requirement. Would anybody else like to say something on that?
Yes, thank you, Provost Wesson. I'd like to jump in just briefly to say that our international students and our large proportion of international students have been at the heart of our consideration as we built the academic plan because we knew we would need flexibility. So far, given that we're using a hybrid method of delivery and that we have some courses online, but some courses with the in-person components, we seem to be less in danger of the bad ramifications of this for our students than other institutions who have gone entirely online. It was noticeable that Harvard University this morning declared that they were going all online, and then that was swiftly, or was it yesterday? And that was swiftly followed by the announcement regarding international students and not being able to stay in this country if they are working exclusively online. So we expect a large pushback from within the institution of higher education and with the research universities perhaps leading the way. There will be more coming out on this. I do alert you that our colleagues at the International Student Support Services Office, that is Dean Sue Menike and Dean Jessica Hale's office, sent a message to all international students about this topic earlier today. So if you haven't looked at your email and you're an international student, you'll find it there from about 9 o'clock this morning. Thank you, Provost Wesson. And Carrie, I think we're ready to move on.
Yes, this is a question I think probably for Margaret. It's from PJ Howard. He's wondering, what should club and organization leaders anticipate? Should they be planning for new types of in-person meetings or socially distant alternative activities?
Yeah, thanks, DJ. Yes. Just as we did starting middle of March, a number of student organizations pivoted to virtual formats. And I have to say, I think for a lot of students, that was very successful because it engaged and oftentimes more students, and students who might in the past have been hesitant to show up to organizations in person found the virtual format more welcoming and being able to engage in programs. But we will on campus be having to follow close guidelines for health and safety, practice physical distancing. We will have limits on the number of students allowed in spaces with recognizing those kind of limitations. So it will be different, but there will be opportunities for in-person. And then we also have to be sensitive to the number of students who will remain not on campus and choosing to engage remotely, and how we engage them around the globe in our student activities and events. So again, lots of opportunities to be creative. So I see it as a nice hybrid about some virtual programming as well as in person, but just on a smaller scale.
Thank you. There's a couple of questions that are in this same vein, which are mention of the social compact that President Altman referred to in her opening comments. And in that vein, how do we intend to enforce social distancing, requiring masks, screening, following the rules, knowing that a couple students have noted that not all students necessarily comply with various rules, and wanted to hear some more about that.
Sure, I'd be happy to start, and then I'll invite the other panelists to step in. So this is going to be a year like no other in this way, as well as in so many other ways. We've been working on the language of the Student Compact with students participating, and DIPCON had the idea early on, before we as an institution realized that we would also be moving towards a social compact. And so we're building the language of it in consultation with students. There's going to have to be a general acceptance among the community that what the compact calls for, i.e. observance of all of the safety measures, for this to work at all, and that if it doesn't work, we're going to have to shut down the campus. So there is a lot at stake here, and it'll be a question of educating continuously, so putting out lots of education before everybody comes back, and that involves education for employees as well as for students, and then constant reminders. So we're hoping to have some student ambassadors who will help keep the safety measures necessary front and center for everyone. There will be signage everywhere. There will be the understanding that if you're not appropriately masked or not taking the appropriate precautions, that you simply will have to step out of an activity. So we're hoping that there will be a lot of community moderation on this point. It shouldn't always come down to a conduct hearing, but in fact, there is language in our conduct code already that accounts for this kind of responsibility for the community and for others. So we, like everybody else, are going to have to take this on as a group with everybody accountable and a much higher degree of awareness than is usually required in order for us to operate safely. So lots more coming on this as well. And we will include all of that information about what the compact looks like and what it actually contains in a future communication as soon as we're ready with it. Margaret or Cam, do you want to add anything to that?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
As am I.
So here's a great question that I have to ask. Will the new arts building be open for classes?
Oh, Provost Wesson, I think you should get the honor of answering this one.
I appreciate that. After many starts and stops, we are moving ever closer. And in fact, President Altman and I have a tour of that facility immediately following the conclusion of this webinar. I am told by the supervising project manager that we are perilously close to completion and very excited to be there. And I can't wait. I have not seen the interior of that building since mid-February, and I am told that it is absolutely spectacular. So we do have every indication that we will be able to be residential and will be teaching courses in that space this fall. So stay tuned. I'm sure we will have more announcements to come.
Provost Wesson, let me add that the tour that we're going to be taking with the project supervisor will of course be appropriately masked and physically distanced, correct? Well,
That is absolutely correct. I have my mask on hand just for said purpose.
yeah, me too. Okay, Carrie, thank you.
There's some question about student employment. Shelby Kaplan and a few other folks have asked, what do we know about the impact on campus jobs? Will certain offices be unable to hire due to lack of space for physical distancing or because the staff are working remotely?
Carrie, I'm going to ask Beth Throne with Paul Daigle. The Office of Student Employment falls under OSPGOD, and if Beth would like to say a few words about that.
Yeah, happy to help. I know Paul Daigle, since the July 1st announcement, is currently working with supervisors to talk about creating positions that will allow students to work even if remotely, so you don't sacrifice the dollars you will have earned. So I know he's in the process of doing that. Here's what I'm going to recommend. Why don't you, if you can, Shelby, if you can, and others who may have this question, email Paul Daigle directly, asking them about the role or opportunity. And it may be that we end up creating or shifting some work so that you can earn the dollars that you would like to earn. But in the first course of action is I would email Paul directly. He is in the office. He's out this week. He's in next week. But the student employment at FNM email is being monitored. So happy to help. And again, you can email me in the meantime if you have any direct questions that you're looking for this week. But in the next week, Paul and Stephanie Kessler can answer.
There are a few additional questions that I think for Cam. The first one is, how is full-time status given based on credits taken over the whole semester, or is it based on each module?
I am told by Laura Medvick and our experts in the registrar's office that the interpretation that we've been given by the Pennsylvania State Department of Education and by our contacts in Washington is that it will be on the aggregate for what would have been the entire semester. So that will determine what full-time status is. Great question.
And on the pass, no pass front, there's a question of whether some of the things that happened in the spring would be continuing into the fall, and whether you could, in theory, take the J term as a pass, no pass.
So again, another series of great questions. Our Educational Policy Committee has recommended that we return to our traditional grading system without augmentation for modules 1 and 2. So there is no alteration to the traditional grading system. We did respond to the emerging situation in the spring with augmentations to that system, but those will not be in place as we move forward this year. As for taking courses pass, no pass during the J term, I believe it would depend on whether that was a course that a student was using for a requirement for their major or minor, or to complete one of their core curriculum requirements. Those have been exempted from pass, no pass in the past. Try saying that 10 times fast. But we would have to explore on an individual case-by-case basis whether that would be the case. So if you'd like to take something pass, no pass in the J term, I would say have a first discussion with your academic advisor, and then we will vet it appropriately.
So we will have a regular course schedule for the J term, and those credits would count as if I had taken a regular semester course.
Yes. So in theory, the J term is set aside for those individual experiences for students to work with a close mentor, but that does not preclude the opportunity for faculty to offer a singular course experience and for students to take it and to be credited as such.
So there's some housing related questions. The first one in that series is, if we were to have to close the campus prior to the end of the fall semester, would there be absolutely no opportunity to stay?
Yep, I'll take this. So as we've said, for the on-campus housing will close. We had the experience this spring. It wasn't particularly a health and safe one for our community. And so from that experience, we made the determination that this fall, should the college need to close prior to Thanksgiving, but definitely at Thanksgiving, on-campus residence halls will close. And that's why, as you're making your decision about whether or not to return this fall, it's essential that you have plans, if not before, but at Thanksgiving, to go home or to another location. If you need assistance figuring out what some of those options would be, certainly contact our student care coordinator, Susan Knoll. She's off right now for a few weeks. She'll be back middle of July. You could also speak to your college house dean as another resource, but this is some of the planning you need to do ahead of time to think about if returning to fall is feasible for you. Returning to F&M this fall is feasible for you.
As a related question, Margaret, from Maria Merriweather, she is wondering, if you live in off-campus housing and the same situation occurs, would you be able to make a choice about whether or not to return to your home with your family, or perhaps stay in your off-campus housing due to various circumstances at home, perhaps with illness or elderly family members?
Yes, if you've signed a 12-month lease with an off-campus provider, that, again, we'll be watching what state guidelines are, and so that will, and city guidelines at that time. So that's what we always have to be cognizant of. But otherwise, as we experienced again this spring, we did have students who remained in their residence. You'll have to be working closely with your family to understand what resources are both here available to you, as well as making a determination. But as long as state allows such residents, the off-campus providers allow you to remain in residence, that will be fine.
So there's some questions about our testing plans. The question seems to span what are our plans for testing students? Having read some announcements from some other institutions, some are planning regular testing. What are we thinking about sort of post initial arrival testing?
I can start on this one, and then I might ask Donna Flum to jump in. So we are currently figuring out which third-party provider we're going to work with to do the initial testing. We want to make sure that when we test people and they then need to quarantine until they get the test results, that we're working with a provider who can turn those test results around reasonably quickly, so that we're not holding people in quarantine for longer than necessary. Thereafter, we are working on a plan for whom we're going to test when. And there's a number of different approaches. If you're following the announcements from other colleges and universities, you will see that some plan to retest everyone after a given interval. Some plan to test more vulnerable populations, or populations where there is a greater possibility for contact with people off campus, and there are some who are planning to do random sampling. We're working with a consultant who is a medical doctor and is keeping tabs on the possibilities and what proves to be most effective. There are various lines of thought even on whether testing everyone is actually a good way to go. So beyond that first initial testing, which we've committed to, we're still working out what is both feasible, what is reasonable, and what will give us good data to work on, so that we are determining how we're doing as a community. And Don, I'm going to ask if you have anything you'd like to add to that.
So I think that was very complete, Barbara. I would add that we will be doing ongoing screening throughout our community. And so daily screening, and that will help isolate and identify those students or maybe groups of students who might need to be tested. So that helps us a bit there. And I would also say that our Student Wellness Center has a fully developed quarantine and isolation plan, which we're ready to work on as soon as cases appear. There should be a comfort level for students as well as faculty and staff.
Donna, thank you. Of course, you're right to mention screening, and I had neglected to talk about that. So daily screening, personal daily screening is going to be critically important because we need to catch any manifestation of symptoms immediately in order to limit contact from someone who might be falling ill. So employees will be screening as well, and we'll be pre-screening before we bring people back to campus. So that's going to be a very important piece of it. And there was another detail I was going to add, which escapes my memory, but I'll jump back in. I think that's it for now. Oh, I know what it was. I beg your pardon. Contact tracing. So we're also going to be fully ready to do contact tracing. So if we do get information that someone who has tested positive for COVID-19 has been in touch with others on campus or with others in the community, we are going to be fully prepared in order to do the necessary contact tracing, alert everyone else who was in proximity, and then follow through with the necessary quarantine or isolation for those people. So you can expect that we will have a fully operational contact tracing system in place as well that will involve the Wellness Center, but also our HR department on campus. And that was it. Thanks.
Thank you. A couple of follow-up questions that maybe for Donna. There's a question about what are we doing to make sure that everyone has access to masks and gloves and various PPE, particularly noting there are students who may not be able to afford them and are concerned about their safety.
So I'll ask Margaret if she would like to start with this. Otherwise, I'm happy to take it.
All yours, Donna, go for it.
Okay, great, thank you. Let me share a little bit about what the reopening operations team is doing, working with various committees across campus. And all of those committees have multiple focus, but one of the focus is PPE. And I can assure everyone on the call, and they can assure others, that we have a full complement of PPE ordered that will take us through the first couple of months when we're all back on campus. And that's for students and faculty and staff as well. And that PPE includes masks, head shields, face shields, gloves, hand sanitizers, all of the items that you need for personal care on a daily basis. And certainly as that PPE is needed to be replaced, students will have an opportunity to get PPE whenever they need to. But we also know from our vendors that the supplies are abundant. So we feel very confident that we will be able to continue to replenish our PPE and have a small stockpile as well throughout the first semester, the first half of the year and then beyond.
Thank you. There's a question about have we placed a definition on what an outbreak would mean on campus or what might cause us to transition from partially online to more fully online?
I'm happy to start on that one. Thank you, Carrie. So we have a risk mitigation document and flow chart that we are filling out as we prepare, which is going to define thresholds beyond which we know we need to turn and take a different kind of action. We're in the process of figuring out what those numbers would be and then what the consequent actions would be. So we don't have all of those determined yet, but it will depend a lot on our facilities and what we have available for quarantine and isolation space. It will quickly get to a point where it will overwhelm and disrupt community functioning. So the threshold is going to have to be pretty low of diagnosed cases. And of course, a reminder that anyone who is ill and who is seriously ill could, first of all, if you fall ill with symptoms, As Dean Hazlett said, we would encourage you to go home if that's an option. If people are truly ill, then they are likely going to end up, if they stay in the area, at Lancaster General Health, which is just a mile from campus. We will have our wellness center fully up and functioning, both for telemedicine and for in-person care as necessary. So we will be ready to deal with illness that does befall people. But this is one of the reasons why we all need to exercise real care. We have to minimize the number of cases, or we simply are going to get swamped and won't be able to function in residence.
Thank you.
Donna, would you care to add anything to that, or Margaret, or is that a sufficient answer?
I think that is sufficient. We certainly know that our partners in student wellness have a fully fleshed out triage protocol should anyone present with symptoms. And we've identified spaces for quarantine and isolation in which full care as well as food service, all of those details are in place.
As the moderator, I'm going to take the liberty of posing a question to myself and then answering it. Because I've seen this question in a couple of places. The question is, will the college be providing paid Zoom accounts to all students so that they can get past the 40-minute time limit on free accounts? The college currently has a site license to which all students are able to create an account that doesn't have any of those restrictions in place. If you want to activate an account, you can go to fandom.zoom.us and log in with your FNM credentials, and you will have such an account. If you have any problems with that, just reach out to the help desk. There are questions here about, let's see, is the COVID-19 hardship fund still available, and is it available to students who live off campus, or is it only a resource for those who live on campus?
Yes, the COVID Student Emergency and Hardship Fund is still available, and it's available for current students, whether you live on campus or off.
If we were supposed to study abroad this fall, which is now canceled, what's the best way to get more information about housing options, potentially a sublease or other options?
So get your name on, we have a wait list of students because we knew this impacted a number of students. So we do have a wait list. Reach out to Mrs. Lori Faust, the Director of Housing. We're working through lots of different housing scenarios this week intensively. So I hope to get more information out to all students, including those who have pivoted to being here in the States because of canceled off-campus study programs. So we're including that into our housing options. So look for more information, hopefully by next week.
There's some questions about, do we have things to share about how we intend to clean our facilities, such as classrooms or residential spaces, any changes or things to expect there, particularly in shared spaces?
I think I might be able to take that, Carrie, and then ask anyone who would like to jump in to do so. So one of some of the work of Root is to work with subcommittees across campus, as I mentioned, and facilities is working on a full custodial plan that includes increased cleaning, increased sanitation, but also offering multiple stations across campus for our entire community, and that means students as well as faculty and staff to self-care. So there will be stations in which students and our community can clean spaces between those times when custodial is available. But know that they're very cognizant of the constant need to be clean, sanitized, and working on a great plan.
Sorry, I'm taking a quick look. There's some questions about whether or not the libraries will be open, which is a somewhat related question. Libraries and other sort of facilities that aren't classrooms or residential spaces.
Donna or Cam, can you weigh in on that one, please?
I'm sorry, I was having bandwidth issues and don't know that I fully understood the question, but I'll be happy if you can repeat it.
Sure. The question was whether spaces like the libraries or other spaces like that will be open and accessible for student use.
So we're studying that right now from an implementation plan of return to work. Every space in academic affairs has been asked to address that in a plan that we could work with. We obviously will have to maintain personal distancing in all of those spaces, including our library. But I've been working incredibly closely with Scott Vine, who's our Dean of Libraries, to ensure that we have a plan that will work for both the information needs of our students, faculty, and staff, and ensure that we're keeping appropriate social distancing. We may have to work with some constraints, and I think that everyone needs to know that physical access to the library may be limited in some instances because we want to ensure the health and safety of our community comes first.
Thank you. President Altman, we're right at 12:55. I want to be mindful of time. So I want to turn the agenda over to you.
Carrie, thank you. I am happy to be very brief. If there's one or two more questions, just signal, put your hand up if there's anything else you want to throw in the mix. I can begin to wrap us up. I wanted to add to what Donna said very helpfully on the question of cleaning, that on all of these measures, we are following all of the guidelines, federal and local. So that includes CDC guidelines, and our cleaning protocols will line up with them. There will also be opportunities in a variety of spaces for self-cleaning. So as you enter a classroom, for example, there will be supplies there if you'd like to give an extra wipe, an extra clean to the seat and the desk. So we will be sharing some cleaning options and responsibilities among all of us, as well as doing all of the custodial work that is required by CDC and Pennsylvania Department of Education for in-person education, for example. I wanted to say a quick word, but I'll ask Carrie just whether you wanted to jump back in, or are we good for now?
I think we're good for now. There are certainly plenty of remaining questions. There are a number of very specific questions about some of the registration details that may be just to remind folks to go to the website and pose those there. You will hear them directly from the registrar's office about some of those questions and specific details.
That's a good way for me to segue into a couple of closing comments. Thanks, Carrie. So we will keep those communications coming to you in all kinds of different forms as we work out the various level of details. So do watch your email and watch for other forms of communication, and we'll keep it coming. So beyond that, I wanted to say again that we're actually in a really important moment for history, for education, for the country, and we're all of us engaged together collaboratively in figuring out how to live differently and how to resume what will become the new normal for life in the era of COVID-19. I can't think of a better place than for residential colleges like us to try this experiment and to try it together and to commit to it together as a community. This will be a really important experience that you're living in your senior year, and you're going to be an integral part of it. In many ways, you'll be setting the example for the 3 classes coming along behind you because you are the seniors this year. And so I know that some of the others will be following your lead and watching your example. What we are doing is figuring out how life goes forward until we have things like a vaccine that is both effective and widely available, and until we have medications and healthcare measures that will care for the very ill. So this is how we get on with life in the meantime. What we're doing institutionally is what we try to inculcate in our students and to urge you to adopt, which is resilience and innovation and analytical ability and the ability to adapt to new situations and carry on with the really important things like education while dealing in an era of constraints and of limitations. We're going to be able to do this really well, and we're going to be able to make that happen if everybody commits to following the necessary procedures to make it happen. I would be so unhappy if we have to pivot and shut down the campus again because we ourselves were not careful enough. If it's because of circumstances outside of our control, because of a huge outbreak, federal guidelines, something happening in the Lancaster district off campus, that's a different matter, and we are prepared to react if that that's what happens. But let's make sure that we ourselves control our own destiny as much as we can by taking this on with real persistence and real care and real commitment to everybody else's well-being as well as our own. I think it's actually a tremendously idealistic experiment in many ways, and I'm excited that we get to try this. It was a really big deal to reach the decision that we would reopen for in-person education and residential living. I want now to make sure that we've got everything in place to do that well, and you're going to be really important participants in this. So I hope you are cautiously optimistic the way we all are. I hope you're excited about coming back. And please know, as we've all said, and we will continue to say, we are going to be so happy to see you back on campus, even if we don't get close enough to give you a handshake or a hug. So watch for more, and we're so pleased that you joined us. And we're right on the hour. So in order to respect everyone's time, I think we'll need to close it off there.